Hello, my friends. How are you? I hope you guys are doing well today. I am going to be talking about Brandon Sanderson today because I've been reading almost solely, when it comes to fiction at least, I've been reading pretty much solely Brandon Sanderson for about the past year, which is crazy. He's kind of my new obsession. And I could probably talk about his books and his worlds and the things that he creates and his characters and all these different things, like, so much. So I'm not even gonna try to, cover it all in this video. In this video, I specifically want to talk about one of my favorite parts of his books, which is the way he tackles religion. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm also testing out my Yeti in this kind of setup. My Zoom microphone is out of batteries. I'm going to get some later today, but I'm recording this in the morning, and so I just figured why not try with the Yeti. So this video is kind of just a test as well. So at the bottom of my stack is the book I'm currently reading. It's Warbreaker. This one is one of his standalone novels, and it also probably makes the best sounds today because it's a hardcover and because it's a library book, so it has one of these, I don't even know how to describe it, thick taped up covers. Is there a name for that? It's not a normal book cover, it's the way that libraries bind up their books. There's gotta be a name for it, huh? As you guys can see, there's my bookmark. I'm just a little bit over halfway through. So, the books of Brandon Sanderson's that I have read are the first two books of the Stormlight Archive, which is one of his most popular series, and the first Mistborn trilogy, and Elantris. And now I'm reading Warbreaker. And then I'm going to continue down Stormlight Archive. I'm halfway through, what's it called? The Emperor's Soul in his book of novellas. But I haven't dived too much into Arcanum Unbounded. So that's just if any of you guys are already familiar with Sanderson, you can know where I am. So now a little bit about his worlds and religion. So if you know nothing about Brandon Sanderson, he writes high fantasy, and he is especially good at world building. I find his worlds are some of the most different and fun and exciting that I've ever read in fantasy. He's very, very good at creating different systems, not just of politics or of geography, but of religion and like the physical beings that exist on the planet and magic systems. All of his different worlds, because he writes in many different worlds, have very, very distinct magic systems and religions and types of humanoid figures existing. And then the things that he does have as a sort of through line in all of his different worlds, a lot of them are things that I like. So, for example, in almost every book there's a sort of there's some underlying themes of faith, spirituality, maybe. More so faith. There's a squirrel on a line. Oh my god, it's so cute. Oh, look at it go. It's the fuzziest squirrel I've ever seen. The fur was so thick. Wow. That was a cute squirrel. Anyway, he has a lot of themes of faith and perseverance, for sure. Perseverance is definitely one of the biggest ones. And revolution as well. Not always a revolution of tearing down the top, whatever tier in whatever his system is that he's working in, the top caste or the top economic class. But a lot of his revolutions are very romanticized, and that just feels cozy to me. I don't know if that's... I wish that, and maybe it is. I hope that that's how revolutions happen in real life. I don't know if that's how they do. I don't know if it's that they don't. I don't know. But if hope for revolution exists, I hope that it happens like it does in his books. Because it's very much about just sort of changing the mindset of the oppressed class. And it's from the point of view of the oppressed class, I should note, which is like really simple and so much easier than other things. And that's not all it takes in his books, you know. It's usually like the first step is changing the mindset, and then after that all these little wins start adding up to the point where you can start toppling the system. But yeah, I don't think it's quite that easy in real life, I guess. Now that I've said all that out loud, I think it's quite a bit more complicated. But, you know, escapism. I said I was going to talk about religion, huh? Not politics. That'll be a whole nother Brandon Sanderson video. But I have had a pretty, personally, intense
experience with faith, just like throughout my life. A lot of big events, right? And so it's something that I think about a lot. And so many fantasy authors view religion and religious characters as a sort of binary. And I think that's a lot of the times the way we view it. The way some people view it in life as well. Like, either you're spiritual or you're not. In a similar way to, I don't know, how we view success. You're successful or you're not. You're passionate or you're not. You're sexual or you're not. You're spiritual or you're not. I don't like that noise. Okay, anyway, back to the important matters. Life is a lot more simple whenever you view it in those binaries. But I think really, in an ideal world, all of those things are a little bit more like taste or appetite or style, right? Where it's not only is there a spectrum of how strong you have a sense for it, but there's also such a multiplicity of ways that it can be expressed wherever you are on that spectrum. There's so many different ways to enjoy food, so many different ways to enjoy success, to define it for yourself, so many different ways to be passionate, and everyone has those things to a certain extent. They just manifest in different ways. Sexuality, I think, is the same. There's two spectrums, right? One spectrum of like how in touch you are with those parts of yourself, and then another spectrum of like all the different ways it can manifest. And spirituality, I think, is the same too. There's not just a spectrum of how strong you are in touch with that, but there's also a spectrum of all of the different forms that it can take in your life. And so there can be a very esoteric, sort of witchy person who is an atheist, and there can be a very esoteric sort of witchy person who is extremely faithful. And there can be Christians who are very almost atheistic in their understanding of Christianity. And then there can be Christians who are very like wibbly wobbly invested in the mystery. And then I kind of feel like there are even some whole religions, right, that like in our world, not even in fantasy world, that sort of tap into very different parts of that spectrum for different people. I don't really know if I should be saying all this. This is a little controversial, maybe. But sometimes whenever I think about certain flavors of evangelical Christianity, like Calvinism, that strikes me as a very rules-based, materially based sort of religion. So the experience of that religion, at least whenever I imagine it, is not too different from the experience of being an atheist. And that you have all of these proofs in your head of why the world is the way it is, why exactly the world is 6,000 years old. If you've ever talked to a Calvinist, they know the world is 6,000 years old. No matter how much little old you thinks you know, thinks that you know about how that might not be the case, they've studied it more than you. And they've studied different science. But they're trained in all of these apologetics. They can talk you in circles. So it's like, okay, sure. Whereas the experience of, from what I understand, many Eastern religions, and I have not had too much experience with Eastern practices, so grains of salt in many of them. But then also, generally just a lot of older religions. So, Catholicism, depending on the region, and I imagine all these things depend a bit on the region as well. Catholicism, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, as well as a lot of sort of pagan and especially folk practices. They're much more faith-based, right? Where the goal is specifically to not understand and to just sort of bask in the presence or the mystery, to humble yourself by not trying to understand it too much. But anyway, all that to say, there's so many different forms and flavors of spirituality, and people can benefit on a personal level. I don't know about a societal level, but certainly individuals can benefit from all of those different flavors, depending on what their needs are. And there should be a space for that, you know? There should be a space for everyone's needs to be met in the same way that we work hard to. We've pretty much succeeded in meeting everyone's needs when it comes to, in first world countries, things like hunger. And maybe not fully succeeded in this, but we at least understand that most different career options are valid nowadays, even if they're not all accessible to everyone. People don't usually, harshly judge people for working careers that maybe they wouldn't. Some people would, but like decent people, But, man, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of decent people, like really, really good people, who I still struggle to talk to about the spectrum of spirituality. It's like not a thing that's in right now. But Brandon Sanderson really, really, really talks about spirituality well. And that spectrum isn't directly confronted in his books, as it probably shouldn't be as explicitly as I am. But it's expressed. It's expressed in all of his different characters. They all have such different relationships with the divine. Some of them are not spiritual at all. Some of them are very spiritual and steadfast in that. Some of them struggle with spirituality.
And also the great multitude of religions that are in his books.
Always opens up the sort of opens up ideas about how religions can form and how societies can form based on those faiths. Another thing that I think many fantasy authors don't some do, but not all do, is the integration between their magic system and their religion can be very straightforward. Like, if you're a spiritual person, you got the magic. Or if you got the magic, the way to use it is to, like, be spiritual. Like an avatar or something. There's not too many benders who are atheists, for example. Avatar: The Last Airbender. And you know, that show's for kids. I'm not saying they should do this, but I'm saying that Brandon Sanderson does do it, and it's really exciting and engaging to read. About characters who can have incredible sets of abilities, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're spiritual or that they have any faith whatsoever. Oh, there's something in my eye. Stop it. That didn't help. I just pulled a very long cat hair out of my eye. I had to get up, and I pulled it out, and it kept going. It was terrifying. So unpleasant. Anyway, I'm sorry if I look a bit shaken. I just had an unpleasant experience. So that means I get to have some coffee now. Good. Anyway, Brandon Sanderson. He has so many characters that have very different relationships with faith and with spirituality and with religion. Some approach it as more of a folk practice. Some approach it from a regimented, organized religion sort of perspective. Some approach it inspired by their magic. And then at all those different approaches, there's different levels of faith, or levels of engagement with faith. And that's just so exciting for me to read, because I feel, it's like so stupid for like me to talk about representation. I feel like, maybe not stupid, that's a little bit harsh on myself. There's much more severe representation issues in fantasy and fiction, which, as a note, Brandon Sanderson's pretty good about representation as well. As another note, he's not like incredibly good at representation when it comes to, as far as I've read, it's very heteronormative. Most of his books, all of his books. And because, it's a fantasy book, race is a very different thing. So you can't really do a one-to-one representation sort of thing, which is good, because in some fantasy books, race does feel like a one-to-one thing, and it's like, what? Why would you build a world this way? It's Branderson. Brandon Sanderson does not build his world in a racist way that replicates our own. But racial and cultural issues are definitely very, very, very represented. But it's definitely not like a one-to-one thing, so I can't really say he's very good at representing different races. It's more that he's very good at representing different issues and different happenings of, like, possible histories, you know? Some of them are similar to our world, and some of them are very, very different. But I feel represented in the way that he talks about faith and religion, and I could honestly, like, cry if I thought too much about it. I can, like, feel it deep inside me right now, but it makes me feel really good to read his books. And it's also clear in the way that he writes that he's thought very, very carefully about what he's doing with these characters. Not necessarily in, like, what message is he trying to get across, but what exactly is he trying to represent. It's clear that he's thought about that, at least to me. And that also goes a long way. And I think perhaps part of the reason that he's thought so much about it is because he was raised Mormon. I'm truly not sure where he is right now with that. And Mormonism does not come out at all in his books, except in the, I think, and I don't know a whole huge lot about Mormonism, so if any of you do, maybe you would be able to see it more in his books. But the biggest influence of that I see is the way that he talks about gods in his different universes, because all of his different universes are, well, I should rephrase that, all of his different worlds, so all of his different series, such as Mistborn would be one series, the Stormlight Archive would be another series, and then sort of his one-offs like Elantris is in its own world, and Warbreaker is in its own world. All of these different worlds are in the same universe. And the gods, the higher powers at play, are the kind of rarely seen, but sometimes seen, sometimes revealed thread throughout the worlds, along with some other things, but for the most part, it's just, you can tell there's something bigger going on, and that all of these worlds are simultaneously existing with these very different magic systems and whatnot. And I think astrologically speaking, it's very complicated and scientific in a way that enmeshes the cosmic mysteries with time and space. And I think Mormonism kind of does that too. It
enmeshes the idea of planets and godship and world building even into a sort of very grounded spirituality, which is very cool. But I'm very glad that it is not clear whether Brandon Sanderson is pro-religion or anti-religion. I feel like that comes out in so many fantasy books. Like, either the spiritual people are like dumb or they're smart. And again, it's just another spectrum that he's really, really good at expressing and manifesting in his books. There's very dumb spiritual people. There's very evil spiritual people. There's very good spiritual people. There's also very dumb, evil, and good non-spiritual people. From protagonists to antagonists. And so it doesn't feel like he's ever preaching to you about what you should do. It just feels like he's representing a very, very varied, very, very varied, very, very varied, understanding of faith. I think I have rambled everyone's ears off at this point. I'm gonna keep playing with some book sounds just in case you guys want to hear, but I'm gonna try and stop with at least the substantial rambles. But there might be, like, you know, some low-key rambles. His books are also, like, freaking long, so you never have to worry about running out. I mean, I never have to worry. There's just so much, and I'm so excited to keep reading more. I've read, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish of his books now, and I feel like I've just scratched the surface. I do not feel comfortable calling myself like a super fan or anything like that, because there's so much more. I'm just at the beginning. And I've spent about maybe a little bit less than a year reading his stuff. You guys may be able to tell there's some chaos going on around here from pulling these 3 chonkers off. I kind of caused some mayhem. I will say that for the Stormlight Archive specifically, I'm not a huge fan of the cover art for most of the books. I feel like it doesn't really do the stories justice. Personally, I think the art is incredible, and I think the art does moments plenty of justice, but I don't know if it, like, sells the book very well, if that makes sense. There's also a lot of art within the books.
very nice to read so much that you earn a picture, if you know what I mean. This is the second book in the Stormlight Archive, and this was the first, the big one. I wish I had gotten this one in the normal paperback version and not the mass market paperback. The only reason I could get through this little brick of a book was because the story was so good. Oh gosh, I feel something in my eye again. Was because the story was so good. But reading this guy, like the physical practice of reading this guy was so hard. Because it's just a little chunky brick. And it's like the text is so small. So if you're gonna get any of these, I do recommend dropping the extra money. I can't really remember. It's probably like a $5 or $10 difference. The big one or the small one? Oh gosh. Maybe I have earned another sip of my coffee. Very good. Das gut, das sehr gut. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have read any Brandon Sanderson books, or if you want to. Or if this was like fun for y'all, or